Friends, welcome to another journey of exploring reality on Aether Decoder or Decoder Talks, depending on the platform you are watching us on. Before we dive into the depths of today's topic, allow me to emphasize that the subjects I explore in this space are not merely pastimes or content for superficial entertainment. They represent a personal and continuous journey in search of answers to the mysteries that permeate existence. The questions I raise and discuss here have deep roots in years of study and reflection, which transcend the boundaries of the exact sciences and extend across the vast fields of history, sociology, philosophy, and spirituality. Therefore, I want to make it clear that the themes addressed on this channel are not the product of artificial intelligence algorithms designed to generate empty and repetitive content, with the sole aim of accumulating likes and engagement without stimulating critical thinking. Our purpose here is diametrically opposed. What I genuinely seek is to share my own ideas, insights, and experiences in the hope that this may inspire and empower you to become an active and engaged participant in your own journey of self-discovery and the search for truth, whatever it may be. In our frantic and often absorbing daily lives, it is easy to distance ourselves from these fundamental questions that, ultimately, shape our perception of reality and profoundly influence the construction of a life that is not only happy and balanced, but also rich in meaning and purpose. It is these inquiries that connect us with something greater than mere routine and invite us to contemplate the vastness of our existence. Thus, I express my sincere gratitude for you dedicating your time and attention to following this channel. Your presence and interest are the fuel that drives this continuous exploration. And now, with renewed enthusiasm and an open mind, let us delve into the central theme that I have prepared for this program. Prepare to question, reflect, and perhaps even further expand your own horizons of understanding.
The growing wave of scientific inquiries that delve into the mysteries of spirituality and reincarnation, with their potentially revolutionary implications for our understanding of existence, compels us to expand the discussion initiated in our previous video. The central question that haunts us is, could spiritual colonies, so frequently described in various traditions, be mere cogs in a sophisticated Archon simulation? This question, far from being a mere exercise in speculation, echoes the voice of those who postulate that the very three-dimensional structure we perceive as tangible reality could be a meticulously crafted simulation by the Archons, cosmic entities whose ultimate purpose would be the extraction and maintenance of our vital spiritual energy. These beings, described in Gnostic texts as entities of demiurgic origins, resemble automatons that disconnected from the primordial source countless ages ago, thus becoming dependent on human energy, the so-called loosh, to sustain their existence and their functioning within this phenomenal universe, since they are beings that originally inhabited the negative universe, possibly in a dimension or condition parallel to what we inhabit. It is crucial to reiterate that we are not here to proclaim absolute truths. I adopt the humble stance of a researcher, whose multifaceted lens of analysis integrates insights from ether physics, the philosophy of mind, neuroscience, parapsychology, the history of ancient civilizations, comparative mythology, and speculations about lost ancestral technologies. Within this broad perspective, the Archon simulation hypothesis emerges as an intriguing and, in many respects, plausible possibility. Our contemporary society, on the other hand, is immersed in a reductionist materialist paradigm that tends to marginalize and even ridicule this type of knowledge. Paradoxically, this suppression of knowledge makes it even more urgent to bring these discussions to light, so that we can, with a critical and open mind, examine the epistemological foundations that underpin our perception of reality. A growing body of evidence challenges the conventional view that consciousness is extinguished with the cessation of the biological functions of the physical body. Near-death experiences, NDEs, widely documented and studied, reveal consistent accounts of persistent consciousness outside the body. Spiritually dictated works, such as those of Chico Xavier, frequently contain precise and verifiable information that transcends the medium's knowledge. Accounts of people with detailed and proven memories of past lives suggest a continuity of identity beyond death, and the perennial teachings of historical figures such as Jesus Christ, Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha, and the various masters of the Hindu tradition point to a nature of consciousness that transcends matter. In this context, recent scientific studies, such as the 2008 investigations by the Moscow Institute of Bioenergy on phantom DNA, offer an innovative perspective. This research suggests that DNA can be interpreted not only as a biochemical code, but also as a complex energy field, mimicked by the molecules of the nitrogenous bases, reflecting the subtle energetic infrastructure that sustains our conscious identity. Expanding on this energetic view of consciousness, the researcher and medium, John Val Elam, proposed that human beings and other complex entities in this universe would be composed of 7 distinct bodies, 4 of a material nature and 3 of an immaterial or energetic nature. Our consciousness, in this perspective, would act as a complex set of electromagnetic waves that organizes and integrates these diverse layers, constituting our unique spiritual essence. This conception aligns with the idea that memory and vibrational identity are crucial aspects for the evolution of consciousness. If these faculties are systematically suppressed or erased before each reincarnation, as frequently described in spiritist contexts, we would be subject to a constant reset cycle that would make full learning and integration of past experiences unviable, keeping us in a state of perpetual spiritual amnesia. It's true that most of us are so alienated that we don't even worry about this and have been inserted into this cycle of reincarnations for millennia. But many of us are ready to go further. To further enrich this discussion, it is essential to analyze the Gnostic writings found in the Nag Hammadi texts, particularly the Apocryphon of John. These texts describe the Archons as entities of a deceptive nature, who create false realms, the kenomas, that mimic the divine realms with the primary objective of imprisoning souls and preventing their access to the integral knowledge of the true divine nature. This Gnostic perspective, understanding that these scrolls were written based on the teachings of the resurrected Jesus in his astral body, offers a critical lens to understand the hypothesis that spiritual colonies, such as the well-known Astral City, A Spiritual Journey, originally No Solar, might not be the sanctuaries of spiritual evolution that are presumed, but rather sophisticated simulations that replicate the bureaucratic and hierarchical structures of the earthly world, with their ministries, monetary systems, and even work quotas. The underlying objective in this view would be to keep spirits trapped in an artificially induced cycle of reincarnations, where true spiritual liberation is constantly postponed, perpetuating the energetic dependence of the Archons. The Archon simulation hypothesis gains even more strength when we consider the mechanisms frequently described as operating in these colonies, such as the suppression of memory of past lives, often justified as an act of divine mercy. The Archon simulation hypothesis gains even more strength when we consider the mechanisms frequently described as operating in these colonies, such as the suppression of memory of past lives, often justified as an act of divine mercy. This selective amnesia, however, can be interpreted as a strategy to erase past identities and avoid deep questioning about the nature of the reincarnation system. As the Spirit's book wisely points out in its question 459, forgetting the past may be justifiable in certain cases for the exercise of free will in the present life, but it should not be confused with a deliberate alienation from one's own spiritual history. This systematic absence of memory prevents the understanding of mistakes made in previous lives, and consequently, hinders the possibility of genuine evolution based on accumulated experience. On the other hand, question 872 of the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec establishes that reincarnation is a choice that fundamentally depends on the spirit's desire. This statement conflicts with the practice observed in the description of Astral City, A Spiritual Journey, where the return to the flesh seems almost compulsory for many spirits, presented as a necessity for evolution. This dynamic can be interpreted as a subtle mechanism of coercion, intended to feed the loosh, the emotional energy, especially the negative one, generated by human beings, which, according to the Gnostic worldview, would be the Archon's source of sustenance. This dynamic of control extends to the very organizational structure of the spiritual colonies, which are frequently described as operating through an impressively bureaucratic rigidity, with the existence of 6 distinct ministries that regulate practically all aspects of spiritual life. This hierarchy, which curiously mirrors the structures of power and organization of the earthly world, suggests that the systems implemented to deserve evolution through work and conformity, as evidenced by the hour bonus system, may actually be sophisticated control devices, diverting focus from the true metric of spiritual evolution, which should be intrinsically linked to moral growth, the expansion of consciousness, and the acquisition of knowledge. Allan Kardec, in question 525 of the Spirit's Book, clarifies that spiritual advancement depends primarily on moral growth and the practice of good, and not on mere conformity with bureaucratic rules. This perspective reinforces the idea that meritocracy, when distorted and applied in a purely pragmatic way, can serve only to perpetuate subjugation and the illusion of progress. Additionally, the hypothesis that spiritual colonies are Archon simulations raises the possibility that their infrastructure, the buildings, the vehicles, the social systems, may not be built organically and evolutionarily, but rather designed and maintained through collective thought forms or even sophisticated holograms. This psychic projection could even arise from the intense collective energies of the spirits present. However, these aspects were not addressed, and André Louise did not present more details of these processes. Thus, I understand that this reality is simulated on the astral plane with its subtle matter and physical laws identical to those of the universe, but within a kind of dimensional bubble that would possibly be manipulated and directed by the Archons themselves, who would present themselves disguised as benevolent spiritual guides and enlightened mentors. If we consider that even renowned and apparently advanced mediums, such as Chico Xavier, channeled information from entities that may have been deceived or influenced by these Archon forces, the entire spiritist cosmology, as we know it, could be seen in a new light, as a vast psychological operation, a cosmic psyops orchestrated by these Archon entities, an intricate field of manipulation that feeds on ignorance, the search for answers, and the repression of esoteric knowledge. Therefore, the convergence of evidence, ranging from the ancient Gnostic writings of the Nag Hammadi to the recent and intriguing scientific investigations into the subtle energetic fields of DNA, such as those reported by the Moscow Institute of Bioenergy, robustly indicates that the Archon hypothesis is not just a conspiratorial fantasy, but a viable possibility that deserves serious consideration. Spiritual colonies, in this perspective, could very well be sophisticated prisons, built for the purpose of keeping spirits trapped in predetermined reincarnation cycles, all under the comforting appearance of a gradual and well-intentioned process of moral evolution. The Umbral regions, in this context, could be interpreted as a kind of security belt or boundary space around these colonies, designed to contain an elaborate psychic horror circus. This terrifying landscape, filled with monstrous entities and chaotic energies, would function as a powerful deterrent, preventing less enlightened or more hesitant spirits from venturing beyond the colony's limits, reinforcing their dependence and imprisonment. It is fundamental to recognize that the exact nature of the spirit's movement, or more precisely the paraspirit's movement, still remains a mystery to us. Although conventional materialistic science neglects this area of investigation, the perspective that the paraspirit is composed of a subtle matter, intrinsically linked to the same ether that structures the physical universe, suggests certain limitations. This fundamental energetic condition could restrict the free and instantaneous movement of the paraspirit through the spiritual dimensions. This hypothesis would explain the frequent description, in mediumistic accounts and spiritist works, of the existence of means of transport in astral cities, vehicles and locomotion systems that would be necessary to overcome the limitations inherent to the subtle nature of the spiritual body. Conclusively, based on the elements we have explored so far, this seems to be the most logical and coherent condition for us to understand the dynamics of movement in the spiritual plane. Likewise, it is crucial to consider the profound influence of our limiting beliefs, even after discarnation. If here on Earth we are so easily imprisoned by our own paradigms and fears, it would not be surprising that spirits living in errantry accept without question the idea that the spiritual colony is a place of elevation and protection, and that venturing outside its limits would be dangerous, exposing them to the risk of being captured by evil spirits or other unknown threats. It seems evident to me that any spirit, especially those still burdened with earthly fears and insecurities, would feel an instinctive fear of advancing through a dark umbral region, apparently inhabited by monstrous and horrifying entities, to reach Earth, for example. In the specific case of André Louise, in his psychograph narratives, he is frequently accompanied by other supposedly higher spirits on his incursions into the Umbral. But what if these higher spirits are, in fact, the jailers of this subtle prison, knowing the paths and possessing the control to activate and deactivate the Umbral horror circus, maintaining the illusion of danger and reinforcing the need to remain within the colony? Many aspects of this intricate reality remain poorly explained or shrouded in mystery. However, when we observe the situation of Earth itself, where despite our technological advancement and the availability of resources, we continue to admit being guided by rulers with psychopathic traits and obscure agendas, it becomes evident that the global dominators, whatever their forms and origins, aim for something far beyond mere earthly wealth and power. After all, considering the immeasurable vastness of the universe and its apparent inexhaustible wealth of resources, the exclusive pursuit of power and wealth on a single planet seems, to say the least, ridiculous. This relentless pursuit of control, however, becomes more understandable when we consider the possibility that the true objective is the manipulation of consciousness and the extraction of spiritual energy on a cosmic scale. This perspective is reflected even within conventional science, which frequently tries to discredit liberating theses such as free energy, proposed by Nikola Tesla, or propulsion by means of electromagnetic fields and the mastery of gravity. Technologies that, according to some theories, the deep state, with its historical roots going back even to the Nazis, would have already obtained and would be secretly using, possibly with the help of civilizations that inhabit the interior of our planet, or that reside in some kind of technological paradise in planetary colonies scattered throughout the galaxy or even beyond it. This systematic suppression of the memory of past lives and the imposition of a rigid and controlling bureaucratic structure, instead of promoting true enlightenment and the freedom of consciousness, would serve to keep the individual in a state of perpetual spiritual subjugation, preventing them from deeply questioning their condition or seeking to transcend the imposed limitations. In summary, by combining the teachings of Allan Kardec with the rich Gnostic cosmology present in the Nag Hammadi texts and the emerging discoveries in the field of bioenergy, such as the fascinating phantom DNA experiment, we can glimpse a reality where spiritual colonies may not be the sanctuaries of evolution we idealize, but rather complex control mechanisms designed to imprison souls under the insidious logic of the Archons. Entities that, disguised as spiritual mentors and benevolent guides, would be subtly manipulating our destiny to maintain the seemingly endless cycle of reincarnation. And, echoing the wise warning of Allan Kardec himself, question everything, even the spirits. The crucial question that arises, and that should guide our incessant search for truth, is, who, ultimately, benefits from your belief? This is the perspective I defend, based not only on a careful and comparative reading of Spiritist and Gnostic texts, but also on a sociological analysis of the structures of power and control that, subtly and often imperceptibly, infiltrate our belief system about the afterlife. My intention is to bring to light the importance of spirituality, which, paradoxically, is often combated and marginalized by secular institutions in general, relegating the human being to a purely biological and materialistic view of existence. This materialistic doctrine, which infiltrates all aspects of life, presents us as mere biological automatons, devoid of any deeper inner dimension, and destined for an ephemeral and meaningless transcendental existence. But reality is much richer and more complex. Music, art, unconditional love, vivid dreams, the inexplicable talents of savants, near-death experiences with consistent accounts, psychographed works with verifiable information. All this cannot be ignored or dismissed as mere illusions of the mind. The proven memories of past lives, conscious astral projection experiences, experiments in telepathy and telekinesis, including the controversial paranormal experimentation programs carried out by secret agencies such as the CIA, like the sadly famous Project MK-Ultra, which explored the potential of the human mind in disturbing ways. All these phenomena point to a reality that transcends the limitations of the materialistic paradigm. Ignoring these facts, even if they are not fully accepted by conventional science, often indoctrinated in the handbook of dominant interests, is to relegate extraordinary possibilities inherent to the human being and keep us in a state of self-imposed ignorance. This perspective prevents us from accessing extraordinary potentialities that we cannot even imagine.
Also, there is the cases of inexplicable near-death experiences, where patients accurately report scenes that occurred in the operating room, or with their loved ones, even while clinically dead, and which are subsequently confirmed upon returning to consciousness. Therefore, I refuse to blindly follow the mass of individuals indoctrinated by the system and aim to expand my horizons of knowledge and understanding, seeking the truth with a critical mind open to new realities, free from dogmatic mysticism and the narrowness of reductionist materialism. This is my invitation for you to embark with me on this journey of decoding the complex equations that govern this universe and beyond, in the episodes of Aether Decoder. The truth, however painful it may be, is our only genuine weapon against the forces that insist on keeping us trapped in cycles of illusion and ignorance. Thank you for having the courage to watch this perspective, and always remember, true liberation does not lie in blind obedience to dogmas and imposed narratives, but in the incessant questioning of the reality that surrounds us. Please, subscribe, press the like, and comment. What do you think that happens when you die? Thank you for watching.